Okay, let's go ahead and get started. People will continue to trickle in. So welcome, my name is Katie McCullough, and here's our session of PhD Career Beyond Academia, so from postdoc to industry. So we are lucky enough to have 5 speakers who all did their postdoc and transferred into industry. So we're gonna start by having them introduce themselves. Jason, if you wouldn't mind starting us off.
Sure. I'm Jason Wood. I spent 15 years here at Brown. So I came here to do a postdoc. I got my Ph.D. from Harvard Medical School in 2005 in biological and biomedical sciences. Came here to do postdoctoral work and then stayed on for quite a few years in a non-tenure track faculty position. And then in 2021, so coming up on 2 years ago, I guess this was part of the Great Resignation, right? I decided to move into the biotech world, so I took a job at a small pharma company called Alkermes in Waltham, Mass. And I've been there for a couple of years. My background is in genetics and molecular biology. My current role, I do mostly next-gen sequencing, single-cell sequencing-based approaches. I'm kind of like the sequencing person for the research department in my company. Tag to Melanie.
So I'm Melanie Wasserman, and I guess like Jason, I'm kind of in the heart of the biotech industry, as we are here in New England. I did a PhD in health policy at UNC Chapel Hill with a focus on health equity, and then I came, and when we called it disparities, and then I came to Brown for a postdoc in health policy at the Center for Gerontology and Health Policy for 2 years, and I did that for 1 year, and then I did another postdoc at the Taubman Center for Policy. And then I went to government consulting, Apt Associates, and then did that for 7 years, and then they ran out of funding, so I went to the Lewin Group, another government consulting group. And now I am at IQVIA, which is the world's largest contract research organization and the world's largest healthcare data aggregator. And it's been a twisty, windy, turny road, and I'm here to tell you, if your time in your pre-doc or post-doc is challenging and you feel worried, wondering if there's anything after this, I am here to tell you there is, and there's a lot of opportunity, and things are going to be okay.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Yingyu. I am currently a scientific editor at Cell Press. So for those who haven't heard, we have journals such as Cell. We also have physical science journals like Chem or Joule or Matter. So we are mainly focusing on biological and physical portfolios at the moment, but we're also part of the larger Elsevier company, which I believe have all sorts of journal that you could possibly imagine. So right now my day-to-day is basically handling manuscripts. I work very closely with people in academia, so although I'm in industry, but I still interact a lot with people that are current researchers in academia, as well as industry, pharma, and such. I did my PhD at Cornell. I was trained as a plant pathologist studying host microbe interaction. I did a very short postdoc here at Brown. I'm happy to expand more on that, but also changing focus a little bit, but still under the big host microbe interaction theme. So I left Brown around 21 April, and I've been at Cell Press since. So nice to see you all.
Hi everyone, my name is Galakatos. I did my PhD here at Brown in computer science, and then stayed for a postdoc in computer science as well, with my time being split between the computer science department and the data science initiative. I'm currently actually switching to a new job starting on Monday, but I was at Arrow Street Capital and moving to Acadian Asset Management. Both of these companies are quantitative investment firms that use big data and machine learning to try to outperform the market and provide investment solutions to our clients. Happy to go into more detail as the panel goes along.
Nice to meet you all. My name is Amir Afshar. I'm currently a computational modeler I'm working on semiconductors at Pallidus. I joined Brown on 2020 and worked as a postdoctoral research associate in the chemistry department, working on heterogeneous catalysis with applying a variety of computational tools, considering DFT, machine learning wise, and some other approaches. And then I left Brown on November last year and joined Pallidus, and currently I'm a head of computational chemist there, focusing on the crystallization aspect of the SiC materials. I am a chemical engineer by training and background. I got my Ph.D. In chemical engineering on 2020, and during my Ph.D. I joined University of Michigan in Ann Arbor for about a year, and that's a snapshot about my background.
Awesome,
Yeah.
thank you so much. So we do have a list of questions that we'll work through, but then there will be plenty of time for you all to ask questions, so please keep some in mind. So I guess we can just sort of expand on what we were just talking about. So can you tell me a little bit more about your career journey and any obstacles you may have encountered along the way, any times you felt uncertain, and how you sort of got to the place that you are today? And we can go down the line or jump around, whatever works best for you. So it's up if
Okay, I
you
can
have
go
anything,
again.
Dr. Wood.
My career journey. So I'm pretty sure I spent more time than any of the other esteemed panelists here, being a postdoc and a post-postdoc. I did apply for academic positions for several years. Didn't have much luck. I did have an on-campus interview lined up for March of 2020, and you can guess what happened to that. I was trying
that
to kind of weave a path as a non-tenure track person here. So I got promoted to research assistant professor, a promotion that came with no money, by the way, no extra money in terms of salary. I did get NIH grant, so things were kind of moving along. Brown is not an institution that chooses to develop non-tenure track faculty, which is fine. Some places do, some places don't. So for me, it just kind of became apparent that it's basically what happened is I hadn't had a raise in 15 years. I tried asking for a little more salary money. They said no, because we don't want to pay you that if you don't get the grant. I got the grant. I said, can I get a little more salary paid off the grant? Will cost the university nothing. They said, can't do that, budget's already set. So I kind of figured out it would just be like this forever and decided to pursue other opportunities. So that's kind of my career path. I did try to go the academic route and didn't have much success. So sort of switched sides, which I'm finding to be pretty good.
I'm going to say same. Very similar. When I first went for my PhD, I thought I was going to get my PhD so I could get the better jobs in government consulting. Then I got to my PhD and I got brainwashed into thinking the only career path that was worthwhile was a faculty job. So I was like, okay, well, I think of myself as a worthwhile person, so I want to pursue a worthwhile career. So I went to my postdoc and pursued the faculty jobs, and I wasn't very good at being a postdoc. It was a pretty dark time for me, and I remember sitting in a panel like this, and the speaker saying, here's how someone should be a good postdoc mentor, and not to don't put too much into any one publication you want to do with your postdoc, and and if you're in into the postdocs, if you're in a toxic situation, it doesn't have to be this way, and don't be toxic back when you grow up and get a real job, and and everybody was so quiet in that panel, myself included, just like we didn't want to talk. It was it was a pretty bad situation, I found I didn't even know what jobs were out there in industry. And I went to the APHA conference, and then they were, government contractors were interviewing. I was like, oh, I remember government contracting, because I was in that career before. I just forgot because I got so brainwashed about you have to be faculty member. And so I interviewed, and I got a job, and but by then I had already agreed to do the second postdoc, and they were counting on me for teaching. So I said, "Can you defer my job offer for a year?" And they said yes, which was incredible. And then I really loved being in that first. I love being in government consulting because it's always stuff that is needed right now. One of the contracts we got, it was like, if I would write something today, tomorrow, it was in the New York Times. Didn't have my name on it, because when you're a contractor, your product's owned by the government. But it was like, I'm doing something that's meaningful, and it's helping people to figure out, preventive health services that are recommended or not recommended, and, here's what you should do, and don't believe, the manufacturers that say you should have this product or that product, this is what you need. So, government contracting jobs, you do have to get the contracts. It's faster than grants. You can make an easier living in contracting. It's a little bit uncertain. You'll have periods of better funding than others. Sometimes you'll have to switch jobs because somebody else did a better job writing a proposal than you did. And then they get the contract, so then you go work on their team. So. It's very interesting. It's always changing. It's a great profession for someone with ADHD, which I have. It's also a great profession for someone with OCD, which a lot of my colleagues have, because you have to pay attention to all the details. Like, the best combination of skills for government consulting is ADHD plus OCD. If you have that, join us. I'll leave it at that. Your turn.
Nice. So similarly, when I got into grad school, I was convinced that being a faculty was my only way out. And then until 5th year, which was when COVID hit, and I started to have all this time trying to think what I want to do with my life after I graduated. Because throughout my PhD, as I become jaded over time, I really didn't have the bandwidth to think about my career. And so COVID hit, and then I got all the time, besides, because I was a bench scientist. So instead of going to lab, I started going to these type of career panels, and they all went virtual. So it's really great to access all these information. And I start to think about what I want and don't want to do. So for example, I realized I really don't want to stay at bench anymore. Because it's a lot of repetition, and I really do not enjoy doing that. So I started exploring careers that are not at bench, and there were a couple options that were available to me. One of those is scientific editor, where you still get to think about science, you get to read exciting science. But you don't have to work at the bench. Some other options include doing patent law. Some other things also include consulting. And I find scientific editing particularly appealing to me because it's really about helping, similarly to what Melanie just said, is really about helping people getting their work published, try to help them get their publication out faster, and try to help them however we can. We're really not trying to be enemy to the academics, as some faculty may think that way. But still, I find this particularly appealing and start applying to many positions. And there were a lot of failures involved, which was definitely a struggle. There were times when I thought, oh, maybe I'm not built for this, or maybe there's something in me that they just don't like. But it's really not that. So have confidence in yourself. Just keep on trying. It really just take one offer, and then you're out. So don't think that it's your problem. It's oftentimes not. So just keep on trying, and you'll get out of academia if you want to.
So I guess, my journey, I started here actually as a master's student at Brown in the computer science program. And after the first couple months, I was doing research with a professor, and he convinced me to stick around to do my PhD. So that, took several years and several research papers later, and late nights and everything like that. And then at the end of my PhD, I was deciding, industry or academia. I wasn't really sure, so I decided to do a postdoc and continue my research, which at that point in time I was really invested in, I really liked, and I was in the middle of several interesting projects. So continued my my postdoc, here working on really intersection of big data and machine learning, building systems for supporting that at scale. And then I was sort of torn between I decided I wanted to go into industry, but in this field, when you're building sort of generic systems for big data and machine learning, you kind of need to decide what domain or vertical you want to go into. There's big data in almost every field out there. It could be, the medical field. It could be government data. It could be finance data. I've always had an interest in markets and financial data, and I decided to join AeroStreet right out of my postdoc. So there I was put in charge of a team of about six team members, where we're basically building systems to ingest and support our entire investment process. I was there for about 3 years, and then decided to move to a different company that I'm starting next week, actually, in a very similar field. So supporting the ingest and analysis of data for investment processes.
Similarly, when I got my PhD, I found that my interest might be rather higher toward academia compared to in industry. And however, I found some spot on my skills that at that time I tried to focus on continuing being in academia and working as a postdoc. And then I started to search for some good postdoc positions, and I got 2 postdoc positions, one from Brown and the other from Michigan in Ann Arbor. And about the cause that I really interested the focus of my research at Brown. I enjoyed Brown. And during my postdoc, I found that, as you all guys know, that being in academia is super competitive. And however, as I started to apply for some good schools here in the state, I got rejected for some of them, and I was successful to got just one offer from a university in Virginia, but that wasn't a tenure track. And see myself that I just say myself that Amir, it might be not your goal. There's also industry available there might be interested in your skill, and try to figure out, to find what's the gap between the ones that that the industries required at that time and compared to the ones I have. And I found there are some gaps on my skills, and then I started to focus on my skills, working till late night. And yeah, I started to apply on some industries based on my background, which is on focusing on crystalline materials, working on graphene. Graphene is better to say, and semiconductors. I started to apply on some companies, and then I got an offer from a company solidly working and focusing on semiconductors. And now I'm working as a computational chemist. They're focusing on the computational side, and we have a lot of things to say in the near future for the semiconductor industries here in the US. That's a short story about my...
Awesome, thank you so much. And so I guess, again, to sort of expand on some of this as well, so can you tell us a bit more about the specific field you're in? I know a lot of you have touched on that a bit, and what you like best, what are some challenges, and how do you think your postdoc experience prepared you for the industry position that you're in now? So multi-parts, you can answer any part that you would like to talk about. So we'll start with you again, Dr. Wood, if you don't mind.
Sure. So my field is, I guess we'll say biology, broadly speaking. I imagine that is, in fact, I don't have to imagine. I know that's the largest group of postdocs at Brown. Sorry, what were the questions again?
Yes, of course. Okay. So what do you like best about your position now, and what are some challenges? And how do you think your postdoc experience prepared you?
Things I like about my position now. I get to work with a lot of really amazing, smart people. My colleagues are great. You know, I feel like they're every bit as capable and intelligent as the people I worked with in my academic career. They're all former academics, right? So I get to work in sort of a cross-functional situation. So, you know, my position, I support many different pipeline projects in our company, which is really fun. Get to work with a lot of different types of people. Things I don't like, is that a separate question, or can I talk about things I don't like too?
Yeah, so what are some challenges?
Challenges.
Yeah, it can be things you do
Yeah,
not like.
okay, so things that are more difficult to deal with is there is a large amount of bureaucratic process involved in a corporate environment. That can be a little less fun to deal with. You know, it's not all bad, because with that structure comes a lot of really great benefits. So, you know, obviously, like, the pay and benefits are way better now. That's part of the whole equation. But, like, I have to deal with an IT department that's not fun at all, and ends up, you know, it sounds dumb, but it's kind of like working with a straitjacket on sometimes when you do computational biology and the IT department is giving you a lot of restrictions. That can be a less fun part of the job. How I feel my postdoc prepared me. So I did a postdoc in Drosophila genetics, which, as you can imagine, is not an interest that pharma has at all. But I did get into doing a lot of RNA sequencing stuff and single-cell sequencing, and that is a big interest in the pharma world. And so what I found was that was a very marketable skill and a skill that was in very high demand. So I guess if I had some advice to give, this might be specific for biotech, but you can generalize it. Academia is more on the technological cutting edge. So do whatever you can to exploit that, right? Like, you don't want to have skills that everybody else has, but academia is going to kind of push that edge much faster than industry. So if you can get that sort of cutting edge experience, that will become very valuable. And I think the other thing I would say is, hopefully everyone's familiar with the concept of, like, hard skills versus soft skills, right? I think the thing that will get you your job is developing those hard skills that your target industry wants. I think ultimately what will help you succeed are the soft skills, the things like being able to interface with colleagues, how you get along, how well you work on a team, how well you present. All that kind of stuff ultimately will be more important for your career, but getting your foot in the door, you need to find the skills that employers are looking for and develop those. And I felt like I was, like, in hindsight, I wasn't trying to do that, but I was able to develop desirable skills during my postdoc that helped me get that position.
Well said. Drosophila, is that fruit flies?
Yep. Yeah.
So I'll tell you a story, because I live in Belmont, Massachusetts, which is, you know, at the heart of the, you know, the biotech industry. Like, Moderna's down the road, and your company's down the road in Waltham. So we were having, like, a neighborhood, very disorganized gathering, and then there was a storm, and then one of my neighbors who lived a little bit further down, he came into my house because he was soaked, and it was a really big storm. And he sat down on my sofa, and a fruit fly started harassing him. And I felt very embarrassed that I had, you know, a fruit fly, and, you know, that it was harassing my neighbor. And he said, "Oh no, I love fruit flies." And you know, it turns out he had a job in yeast biotech for beer making, which is really cool, and that's why the fruit fly was harassing him. Anyways, I love that about industry, which is that it's kind of random. You have these amazing interactions with such smart professionals and it's amazing how the different ways that the skills are utilized, like maybe in beer making. You know? So industry pays a lot better. So I'll just say that. My current job, what I love about it, have you ever done one of those team building exercises where you get a bunch of straws and an egg and some tape, and you're supposed to make some kind of a cage around the egg and throw it from the 6th floor of the building and make it survive, and, you know, you worked with a team. Well, it's sort of like that in my job. It's like, okay, so I got a bunch of big data, and I got, you know, people with this skills and that skills, and, you know, and I've got this technology and that technology. What can I do with that that's going to be beneficial for public health and I can sell to a government customer? So that's my job, and I have a great boss who I love. I'll also say in most industry spaces, some of the behaviors that are tolerated in academia are not tolerated.
I was going to say that too.
Yeah, like attacking your colleague in a public meeting where you're presenting, like, no, like you might ask a polite question, but you don't beat each other down like that. Or if you do, HR is going to have a word with you pretty quick. And it's not to say,
Wholeheartedly second
right? It's
that.
not to say that it doesn't happen. Like right now, I'm dealing with a situation, with a there's a culture in a part of my company that's sexist, and like there's really coarse language, and it's like, this isn't like you're doing this today. You're not doing this tomorrow. So you have to be a lot more soft-spoken, diplomatic. Don't make people angry, even people way below you. I learned this early. Even if the person's not doing their job properly, it's got to be handled very properly and very diplomatically, and people need to be given a chance to improve. And you got to keep things kind of on an even keel. Some people don't, but they don't last. So I'll say that.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I definitely agree with what have been said so far. I guess what I want to highlight of what I like about either being in my field or just being in industry in general is that your colleagues are very supportive of you, and they're super collaborative. I find myself to be a very collaborative type of person, but that can be hard when you're in academia and you're technically supposed to lead a project and you're supposed to come up with all the ideas and other people get to criticize. But that's not the case at where I work. Basically, if you have an idea, there are a group of people that are more than happy to brainstorm more ideas with you and come up with supporting what they can do to help you to bring that idea into action. So there are a lot of support that I find to be really helpful, at least for me. So I definitely appreciate that more than comparing to academia. What I dislike about, or what I find to be challenging in my current job is, like I said before, I still deal with many of the academics who are very eager to publish their work. And I completely empathize with the stress that comes with it, right? Like I've had calls with authors where they literally burst into tears because they just really have to get that publication into that particular journal so that they can get promoted. So it literally happens, and I really feel bad of not, being able to help them in that position because, if it's not the Cell paper, it's not the Cell paper. When things like that happen, it is particularly challenging. And, there are authors, these are authors that are very stressed, and they got to let that stress out somewhere. And sometimes we are their outlet, basically, because, we're the ones that kind of control their... They think we're the one that control their career path. They would, so sometimes bad words come out, or they're... So dealing with people is always challenging, but also interesting, at least to me. So the other part of the question was, how did my postdoc prepare me? I think, so I basically changed fields slightly in my postdoc. It was something that I've never worked on. It was a pathogen that I have not heard of perhaps before I did my postdoc. So I got to learn, read a completely new different set of literature. I got to learn a completely different set of biology. And I think what it helped, how it prepared me was that I got more comfortable reading things and learning things that I have no idea about. So I got out of my comfort zone, which is basically what you have to do daily basis when you're an editor, because you don't know what manuscript you're going to handle. And on a daily basis, I read papers that I have no idea what they're talking about. Perhaps I have a words that I don't even understand, but the skills that I got, that I know how to Google, I know how to understand literature, I can grasp the basic conceptual ideas of the paper, is what the postdoc have prepared me for. So, and the other thing I wanted to mention is that Brown, it has its geographical location advantage. It's very close to a lot of industries, no matter whether it's biotech, pharma, whatever you're interested in. So it's a really great place to start building your network with professionals. So I think those are the two things I want to mention.
Cool. So I guess my current role and sort of where it fits in with the organization sort of ties into the original question. So I'm in charge of a group of people who build systems for ingesting data, and that's really like the forefront of our company. Is we try to really, it's called alpha. We try to outperform a benchmark or a market, and we do so by incorporating new data sources into models that we build. So it's a research-first organization, and I'd say if you're coming from academia, that's something that, at least to me, was very appealing. It's something that I would recommend looking out for if you are looking at industry positions, is companies where research and really that's like the lifeblood of the company. That's really what they're most focused on. So I would say that sort of idea and mentality of research first was really what I really liked about my role, and is something that really attracted me to the company. I'd say challenges. It's a very competitive industry, so if you incorporate new data, you build a new model to predict something, you might be the first person to do that, and you might reap the benefits of that. But that's a very short-lived process generally. So, if you have an edge, it's usually not for very long in this field. There's a lot of people that you're competing with, and the markets are very efficient. So it's a constant battle of trying to continuously improve your edge and incorporate new data and really build the systems and process to be able to do so efficiently. So that's something I've really liked. It's a very challenging field, and it's one where there are really big benefits to being able to incorporate the newest technology. So it's something that a lot of companies in this field are really interested in and know that they need to have the latest technology in order to survive and thrive. I guess from a challenges perspective, I think there's a lot of sort of support that goes on in these. So, we build these systems that then are really leading to trades that are executed on the markets. If there are, operational issues with these systems, if there's support, if they go down, if there's a bug, it's something that, our teams are responsible for. We need to make sure that somebody, can troubleshoot or fix any issues that come up. So there can be stressful moments where, people need to hop on and do something at all hours of the day, but, we try to build robust systems that you don't have to do that. And then from, how Brown prepared me, I would say I was lucky at Brown in that during my PhD and especially my postdoc, I was really overseeing several PhD students who were working on research here, helping out with sort of initial ideas, experiments to run, paper writing, et cetera, and mentoring. And that's proved to be very valuable and a very transferable skill when it comes to moving into industry, especially if you're in sort of a more management position where you're running a team, for example. You need to have, as you guys said, the soft skills to be able to build those connections and network across the company to be visible and successful. So I think Brown prepared me very well in that regard.
Can I add something? Because I don't think I spoke about how the postdoc prepared me. You reminded me that the best thing about my postdoc was that I got to teach health policy and evaluation, and it both, it improved my skills in those areas, and the interaction with the students was the absolute best thing for my career. Like, we did innovative stuff in the classroom that I still do today, that we learned together with the students. And like, one of the things was, we went through the Affordable Care Act, the actual text, and we went through and found all the dollar signs and like, what's being funded actually, and like, how can we, get work done in this area or that area. I still do that, and it's incredibly helpful. And then the students who I taught are in these amazing jobs all across industry, academe, advocacy organizations. And I can just pick up my phone, just text someone and say, hey, I need someone who could do this or that, and then I get an answer right away. So I think the connections and the certainly the honing of the skills. Yeah.
I think, as Jason said, the hard skills will get you the job, but the soft skills will really help you make progress in your career at a company or at several companies.
Cool. I think that the highlights and the keywords I want to mention that have been already covered by the speakers. In terms of challenge, I should say that as a computational chemist, I found that this field of research or study have been divided into two fields. One has been dedicated to biological sciences, working with protein, DNAs, wise, and the other direction is focusing on inorganic materials. And at some point, I found that fortunately or unfortunately, I'm not sure, most of the opportunities in industries have been dedicated to organic chemistry, focusing on protein wise. So that made the job search rather tough for me. But that doesn't stop me by searching and focusing on my job track as an applicant. I found several good companies in the here in the US focusing on inorganic materials like semiconductors. Then after some while, I found that that would be the good and correct direction for my career field. I just focus on that specific and particular field. Just keep going, just be patient, and after some while, I found that I found a good point, and also about my career trajectory. In terms of how Brown prepared me research-wise, I should say that my work and research at Brown focused on crystalline materials. I worked on heterogeneous catalysis from the computational device and working with a lot of crystalline materials. And that direction, that opportunity, I should say, that prepared me a lot. Just focusing on crystalline materials. I read lots of books, articles, also wrote some articles, and we have submitted our collaboration paper to Nature a couple of weeks ago, and luckily, I'm not sure it's going to be approved or rejected. I'm not sure. In terms of
Yingyu. Call her and cry on the phone.
Yeah, in terms of teaching and mentoring, I should say, I found Brown as an outstanding place to work for, because it definitely helped me a lot in terms of mentoring, in terms of engaging with people, specifically students, in terms of writing grants, in terms of how we can manage a group of students in a way that they are at some point or finally be enough concerned about their final goals, I should say. And appreciate about the consideration about my advisor, Professor Rubenstein, working in the chemistry department. She helped me a lot in terms of providing me a very great opportunity to dealing with students, teaching, writing grants. That all helped me a lot in terms of finding my current position as a header of computational chemist at Pallidus. That's all about my challenges and also about how Brown helped me a lot.
Yeah, and there's a lot. I see a lot actually similarities in our journeys because your field maybe wasn't super well funded at the time. I think until recently, right?
Yep.
A lot of the industry was overseas and being done more cheaply overseas, right?
Exactly.
And so it would be difficult for someone, on faculty here to get enough funding to fund a faculty position, right?
Of course.
And today, you're, either on top of the world or about to be on top of the world, right? Because there's an emphasis on producing semiconductors here.
Yep,
So
exactly.
your fortunes either have changed or are about to change.
Yup.
And it's this, right? And it's the same for me, because being in disparities, like there's no money for it, so it's like trying to have a faculty position. You're expected to go narrow and deep. Like stay in your field. Don't go elsewhere. Well, if there's no money in your field, you're not going to get a faculty position, or you'll get a faculty position, but you're not going to get a salary, right? So you have to do something else until your time comes, and your time will come. It's just it might be some years down the road, and you might have to do something else for a while. And the journey's good. You learn some good stuff along the way.
Yep, of course.
And I also heard that the students were a big part of your what helped you about Brown, and so
Of course.
some similarities there too.
Yeah, because in my current role, I need to manage my works and also define several projects, and I need to collaborate with my with the internal and also external resources. I got all these skills, honestly, with you from Brown. That's all I should say.
Great, thank you all so much. So this is my final question, and so it's a little bit of a two-parter again. So now that you're looking back on your postdoc experience, can you give some advice to both postdocs currently who are looking to make that career transition and how they can make it a bit smoother or easier, or current PhD students who are looking for a postdoc? So, at both of those levels, so what advice would you give to a postdoc who is looking for industry, or for a PhD student who is looking for a postdoc to help better prepare them for industry?
So I think, most of us have had maybe somewhat of a common thread that there's some career inertia involved a lot of times, right? You kind of keep doing what you're doing because that's what you know and that's the easiest path. So in terms of a postdoc is training for an academic career, period. So, and I don't want to suggest people shouldn't do that. Like, that is an achievable goal, but there is a pretty narrowly defined path, both in terms of the clock starts ticking when you get that PhD, and there are things you have to do. And if you get off that path, it's very hard to get back on it. So I think, being honest with yourself and deciding if you want that academic career, this is probably more for the PhD, end of PhD type stuff. By all means, go down that path. If you know you don't, and you want to move to industry, my advice would be to make that transition as quickly as you can, because the time, and I feel like I have some experience in this regard. I stayed in my role so long, in part for family reasons. I had kids about the time I was looking to move on. This was a very flexible situation that was good for my family at the time, so I stayed there longer than I would have. But that has honestly put me behind in career progression for sure. I wouldn't say it's wasted time, but that is not, generally speaking, time that is valued in an industrial role, at least not nearly to the same extent as in an academic role. So if you want to move into industry, I would, start looking for jobs, and you need to look at job listings for the type of things you want to do and see what they're looking for, and start building your network as much as you can. If you want to apply to a place, try to find someone who's working there, because they will very happily refer you. They get a bonus of a few $1,000s if they refer a successful candidate, and it always looks better having a referral come from inside. So, start thinking about the type of jobs you want, what they're looking for, and move in that direction. If you're already a postdoc, I guess probably the same advice. At the point when you don't want an academic career for sure, start looking and start applying. Now, in biotech, it's a bit of a bloodbath out there right now. It's sensitive to interest rates. There's been a lot of layoffs, much harder to find a job than 2 years ago. In the summer of 2021, when I was looking, I was very surprised to learn the difference in the labor market dynamics between academic and industrial jobs. I think I had an inkling, but as an academic, you send out applications for 200 positions, and if you're lucky, you might get a couple interviews. On the other side, there was this feeling that it was nearly impossible to hire people. You had to snap them up instantly. I had an interview on Friday, got an offer on Monday, because I had another offer on the table. I mean, that's insane. And the application is you send your resume in. It's not 5 pages of research plans and stuff. So it's there's no harm in starting to apply to things that you think will be interesting, and talk to as many people as you can that are in those types of positions and figure out what you need to do to get there. It's not nearly as easy right now as it was, but the fortunes will change and it will become easier again, and you won't have to compete with as many people that have just been laid off and are looking for work. I will maybe stop there in the interest of time.
Thank you. It was interesting to hear you characterize it as a bloodbath, because my company keeps everything a little bit quiet, and it's like things are happening, but it's not being communicated, and it's like, yeah, I think that actually accurately describes what's happening. It's just happening in the back room, and you don't know about it. So the questions are, should you do a postdoc? And
Basically, what advice would you give a PhD student who's applying for postdocs if they know that they may want to prepare for a career in academia? So, for example, would they look for different skills that they could maybe learn, different things like that? Or, as Dr. Wood said, maybe just avoid the postdoc if you know.
Got it.
You don't
Okay,
want-
so yes, a postdoc, the purpose is to prepare you for a job in academia. If you want a job in academia, a postdoc is really good. It gives you time to prepare your application. It gives you time to publish, which is what you must do to get a job. And it gives you time to learn, what is the process for applying. Because I didn't know, nobody taught me what's the, process. That was a really big failure of my doctoral training, was I was never told what the process is for applying, and what the situation is out there. Some people knew because they had faculty in their families, right? And so people who have academic family members know, and the people who don't. I was the first person in my family with a master's degree, let alone a PhD. So nobody was there to guide me, in my family. And if you don't have a family member, you don't know unless you go through it, and then it's too late. So I would say, talk to people who've gone through the tenure, not the tenure process, but talk to people who've gone through the job search process in academia and find out what is that process exactly and what are you supposed to do to succeed. And then use your postdoc to do those things that those people advise need to be done. And then if you want to go to industry, ordinarily I would say don't do a postdoc, and I would say follow this, but what I would say is you may need a safe place to have a job for a
Right,
while
yes,
until you
that's
can find
very
out. So
fair.
postdoc might be a good place to go, but you have to lie. You have to say you want an academic job if you're going to get one.
Absolutely.
And then you might believe the lie, and then you might really look for that, which is what happened to me. And then really look and try to be an academic, and then at some point you'll have to remember, oh wait, that's not what I came here for. I just needed a safe place to be until I can find a consulting job. Is what's my intention. So anyways, the
I guess
second
as
part
a
of
follow-up, would you say a postdoc looks bad?
No,
in any
postdoc
way?
looks
Okay,
great.
good.
Yeah, yes.
I think you would
Yeah.
always be a more attractive candidate than a fresh PhD, but
Awesome.
Yes.
the question
Good
is
to know.
a balance of how
But
much.
you don't get paid super well as a
Exactly.
postdoc, right?
So
So
it's
it's
a
like the
longer term.
postdoc prepared. Definitely. Some of my less good behaviors. Got worked out of me in the postdoc. So I became a better worker as a postdoc. I learned a lot, and that definitely made me a better prepared candidate for an industry job. With that said, we had lots of fresh from their PhD, fresh from undergrad even, folks in consulting, and, they had some stuff to learn, but they learned it pretty quickly. So if you can get if you're not planning an academic job and you can get an industry job, just do that, because, you'll do the same learning, but you'll be paid better while you're doing it.
If you do want an academic job, the things I would look for in a postdoc: number one, publications from that lab. Number two, where are the people going out of that lab getting jobs? That should be the primary two considerations for what lab you choose. Number three, that PI is probably going to be a jerk, but they're going to get people placed, and that's what you care about. So.
Yes.
Good to know.
Yeah. I think for my advice for postdocs that are, looking to go into industry, basically I think try to start looking right now. There's never a good time to start looking for jobs, and now is the best time. So just start applying, looking into positions, and see what skills you still need to build on. And also use the time to network with people starting from right now. And the other suggestion I have is don't get hung up with whatever projects you're working on, no matter how exciting it might be, because by the end of the day, that's your PI's project. That's not yours if you're not going to academia. So I've heard people say, oh, I'm so excited about this project that I am working on as a postdoc, and I want to get published before I start looking for jobs. No, don't do that. Start looking for jobs right now, because industry I mean, sure, yes, some industry do care about your publication, but it's really about how you tell your story, and you don't necessarily have to have that Nature or Science paper to get into industry. So that's my advice for current postdocs. For PhD students, similarly, don't do a postdoc if you are determined that you don't want to go into you don't want to go into academia, because you want to get into industry as soon as possible so that you can start building up your salary increase every day, right? Every year. If you're a fresh PhD and you've been in industry for 5 years, then if you did a 5-year postdoc, your salary is going to be much different. So try to get into industry as soon as you can. And also, if you have to do a postdoc, which was kind of the position I was put into. I was in, yeah. So there was situations for me. It was visa situations that I had to do a postdoc, but it was really clear that when I applied for postdocs, that I talked to potential advisors and say, hey, I don't want to stay in academia, but I do want to learn a skill. So that's why I'm doing a postdoc. It's not that I want to apply to faculty positions, but I want to prepare myself for industry positions. So be clear with your expectation with your advisor, and don't feel bad about leaving them whenever, because by the end of the day, it's your own career and you have to take control of that.
That's way better advice than what I just would have. Don't lie about your intentions when you go to your postdoc. Apparently, you can get a postdoc.
And it depends on the people that you're interacting with. But for me, I felt that I want to be honest with them. So, yeah, that's my advice.
Yeah, do what she says.
I mostly, I agree with what everybody said. I'd say a few things to add. One, it can seem like there's really a rush to get the job. So you might send out your applications. You might have recruiters coming on campus. At least in computer science, a couple of years ago, everybody was sort of hounding the undergrads and grad students to come work there. I've seen several cases where people sort of just jumped into the first offer they had. Especially the numbers can look good. It can seem like a great company. But I'd say don't do that. Really try to understand. Make sure you understand what your options are in industry. Don't take the first person that comes knocking on your door or the first application that you send in. Really understand what the companies are doing, what your path will look like there. Oftentimes, the role you're applying for seems like it would be a really good fit, something you're interested in, but there might not be any meaningful progression after that. So really learn about the companies. If you're coming from academia and research is something you're interested in, make sure that it's something that the company values as well. Not all companies are on the same page about that. And then the last thing I'll add is if you are a PhD or postdoc here and you are applying for jobs and trying to build up skill sets that will be useful in industry, I'd say try to give as many presentations, conference talks, panels, anything that you can do to sort of build up soft skills, those mentoring skills, because those will help you tremendously in industry.
I spend so much of my day making PowerPoint slides.
Yeah, and it gets easier, and especially when you're starting a new job, if you have those skills, it really helps.
Okay. For those who are PhDs now, I would say that first of all, try to get to know yourself as much as possible, and try to be honest with yourself in a way that to figure out if you would like to work in academia or you would like to be in industry, as the speaker said. If you would like to be in academia, I think that would be a good idea and might be mandatory to think about a postdoc position. But if you would like to be in an industry, that not be a required a rule to be considered for yours to be considered. At that time, you should just focus on your skills in order to be more, strengthened in a way that helps you to get the job in the in industry in a way that you like it this the most. The most important part here that I can highlight that is about focusing on your LinkedIn account, and that helps you a lot in a way that to networking your colleagues, and that might be very helpful to, in finding your path, also the good opportunities in industries. For if you would like that, you want to continue toward academia, I should say that at least one postdoc would be a good idea for you. That you should think about that, and just figure out that what the major research that you would like to focus on and continue working. That really help you throughout your postdoc and also getting a tenure track faculty position. The other point I should say for the current postdoc, try to edit and replenish your CVs. I think I know that Brown has a very good career lab that definitely help you a lot in order to edit your CVs and try to mention everything that's helpful. I think that's all the point that they can say as of now. But if you have any specific questions that might be helpful, please just let me know or ask.
Yeah, and I would say polish your LinkedIn.
Yeah, of
profile
course.
Sure.
In addition
Yeah.
to the resumes.
Focus
Also,
on
I
your
would-
LinkedIn. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, focus on your LinkedIn, and I should say that your resume should be a snapshot about your LinkedIn, just in 2 pages. And you can, expand your resume and mention everything that you would like on your LinkedIn. Because as far as I know, and based on my experience, recruiters and companies first of all look over your on your LinkedIn account, and at some point maybe Indeed, that would be helpful, and then try to make it as professional as enough. That definitely help you guys out. So.
I was just going to add, there are, field-specific ways that people expect resumes to be. So having been involved in hiring, you really get a hodgepodge of things. So find people in your field, in the type of jobs you want to apply to, get copies of their resumes. People will be happy to send them to you and look at how they're formatted. Because I don't think there's one format that works for everything, right? Like biotech, there's kind of a very
It's
specific
different,
way
yeah.
you lay it out, and you want to make sure that somebody's going to look at that for 30 seconds or something. They really need to know what you can do.
I guess-
That's very
snapshot.
true.
Yeah, the one thing I would add that I think you mentioned earlier was really reaching out to somebody who works there and sort of getting in that way. If you just
Yeah.
submit your
Yeah,
resume.
don't just apply to jobs because you saw the ad.
Yeah,
It's
if
not
you
gonna
submit
work.
it to the online portal or whatever.
Forget it.
Well, I
yeah.
didn't get my job just by applying.
Me too. Well, you're the exception, but
It's much easier.
Yeah.
I guess I'll put it that way. Yeah, you're much
Yeah,
more
a lot
likely
of-
to get attention.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of jobs that are posted are actually not real because
Yes.
it looks better for the company to have a lot of job openings, for their if it's a publicly traded company. You have to look like you're prosperous, and so you put a lot of jobs out, and some of those aren't real. Yeah, and so.
Or they're not high priority to get filled necessarily.
Yeah, or it's just a general posting in case they need someone with that profile, and then you have a bunch of resumes to draw from. So the networking is key. I have never had to write more than 10 letters to get a job. What I've done instead is networking, find out who's about to hire. Once the job is posted, it's almost too late to get it. So you
Jump on
network
quick, yeah.
and, find out what people want, where there's growth, and go there and talk to people, or where's their company you might want to work with, and start talking to people. And people will talk to you on LinkedIn. You can set up an informational interview. People love to give advice. Say, hey, can I ask for advice about my career? Don't ask people for a job. Ask for advice. And after you speak to each person you've spoken to, your most important question to them is, who are 3 or 4 other people I should talk to for advice about my career, and can I use your name in reaching out to them? And people will do that for you. They might not send the email out, but they'll give you a name and they'll say, yes, you can use my name. And you say, hey, so-and-so, such and such person told me to reach out to you for advice. Here's what I'm looking for. Can we talk? And at some point, and so it's this network that builds, right? And at some point in your networking conversation, someone will say, hey, you know what? I'm hiring. I'm going to post the job next week. Can you apply? Okay, and that's how you get the job. My last job search, I applied to 2 jobs. One was like that, networking call. Hey, I'd like to work with you. Oh, I'm hiring. The job's going to be posted next week. Apply. Okay, how can I help you get me hired? Put your resume in this format and emphasize these things. You got it. And I got the job, right? The other job was a total throwaway. So it was like I wanted to go to Haven, which was the Amazon Morgan. Anyways, it's a really cool organization. They were like, send us your resume. We're always hiring cool people. And then they went bankrupt the next week. So, but anyways, yeah, don't just apply to jobs. Like network. Really, it's going to save you a lot of time.
I guess one thing about job descriptions is also don't take them for exactly what's written on the page.
But you know what though? A lot of places use AI to scan. So don't take exactly what's on the page as to what they're looking for, but use all those keywords in your application.
Yeah.
So because the AI will throw your resume in the waste bin and the hiring manager will never see your resume. The AI is going to filter you out. So that's the other reason to network is you gotta. So when
Skip
people
that
apply
step,
for a job at IQVIA, by the way, we're hiring, and there is a real job it's a real job on my team right now, and they need to fill it fast. But anyways, when you're applying, the hiring manager needs to know you've applied, and someone needs to flag it for them, and they need to tell the HR that's been outsourced to India, hey, can you guys make sure this person gets a screening interview? Because like one time I had to rescue from the waste bin an application from someone. They were looking for someone with a doctoral degree in nutrition, but she only had a postdoc in nutrition. Like she had her Ph.D. in something else, and I was like, do you guys not know a postdoc is like more and better than a Ph.D.? So it's like it's really this faceless, nameless new world. So what I've been advising new applicants now is just make a table that has on the left-hand side, on your resume, make a table, and on the left-hand side you put in all the requirements from the job, and on the right-hand column you write down how you meet it or not, and then that way you at least get through the AI to the screening interview, or at least as a person looking at it.
Yeah, and if you have somebody you can reach out to, even better, because
Even better, yeah.
somebody will then at
Make
least
sure
spend the
it's
30
Yeah, but
seconds
use
to
the
look at the
exact words. Like, don't use some word that people in the field should know is the same thing. Yeah.
Great. So we can turn it over to the audience. Do we have any audience questions? Yeah?
I do have a lot of questions. So.
And we will have also some one-on-one.
Yeah, exactly.
Please,
So I'm going
please.
to ask all of them. I was making some notes. My name is Vishnu. I am a postdoc at Center for Gerontology. I specifically came because Melanie was going to be here. So I finished my PhD in Health Services Research in August, and I'm currently a postdoc at the School of Public Health, looking to move into industry. So a lot of the advice that we received here was really, really helpful about when to think about whether to go into academia or not. But if you're already in postdoc situation, at what point to sort of jump out or whatnot. Anyway, so I guess this question sort of relates to both Melanie and Justin, right?
Jason.
Sorry. So in pharma as well as biotech, I've lately noticed that a lot of folks from School of Public Health, whether it's health services research or biostatistics or epi kind of trained folks, have been entering pharma and biotech to some extent. In this thing called health economics and outcome research, I know IQVIA also does
Yep.
something
We
like
do.
that.
Mhm.
So as someone who is looking to get into that kind of field or looking to get hired, what would your number one advice be?
Talk to me.
I'm going to, thank you. Can I ask one more?
Of course, yeah.
So I'm someone who did an undergrad and then worked for a few years, then applied for a master's, worked for a few years, and then did a PhD, and now I'm a postdoc. So in private sector more generally, how do you value the years of experience? If you're, typically if you look at the job posting, they have a salary range, increasingly more so these days. They didn't used to have much earlier, but now they do. So how seriously should we take that salary range, considering the fact that you have actually a lot more work experience? Sort of relevant. It might not be perfectly relevant, but I would argue that any kind of work experience is relevant because at the end of the day, you're learning to deal with people, clients, things of that. Hard skills maybe not so. So, yeah, the work experience and how that is taken into account, both in the sense of like getting screened for the interview and after you made through the interview in the process of salary negotiations and whatnot, and even further down the line for promotions and stuff like that.
I have some of the same questions, because the transparency is new, and there's a lot of questions about salary equity, and it's like, I thought I was being paid really good in my current job. I was like, you're offering me what? It's like, okay, great, this is more than I thought I could make. And then I was speaking with another colleague, and he was saying, I'm seeing this job being posted, and it's, I want to move on, and it's only X amount, and that's really low. And I'm like, that's more than I'm getting paid. So, I have, these are questions we're going to be wrestling with.
Right. Salaries in biotech have been pushed up a lot over the last 2 or 3 years, especially. That's slowing down now, but they were spiking pretty hard, which is great. I think to your question, that experience, sort of pre-terminal degree, will always be valuable. I think that if it's private sector, like they're always going to value industry experience. I don't know as far as leveling, how much that's going to matter if you're going into a post-PhD position. That may not affect the level, but I think certainly would make you more attractive to a hiring. This person knows what it's like to work in a corporate environment. They have some experience doing that. So, yeah, generally, companies are not. Every company is different, but they're not going to try to lowball you too much, especially in a hot job market, because you're going to move after a few months, right? So their goal is not to pay you as little as possible. In some sense it is, but at least my company, I think, tries to pay people fairly. Like, they know if they have a candidate they've identified and that's a good candidate and that's someone they want, they will determine an appropriate level and a salary that's consistent with the market. And we have a process, I don't think this is unusual, where you compare with your peer institutions and a couple times a year, like I've gotten raises in the middle of the year that's not like a performance increase, but this is like a market-based increase. Hey, the salaries are going up, here's some more money, congratulations, which was great.
Yeah.
That's not happening this year, but that was happening last year and the year before.
It was happening for me this year, and it's a good thing they did, right? So I did get a raise, and it was like, my performance evaluation actually wasn't that great this year, but they gave me a 5% raise. And a few weeks later, I got a call from a competing companies for the exact same job, and it is a direct competitor, and they were offering to pay me what I was making before the raise. I was like, if not for this raise, I'd be there, because you work a while, somewhere for a while, and you kind of want to switch tortures, So, yeah.
It's very expensive to lose people, so they would rather retain you generally.
I guess I would say the years of experience helps you sort of pass the initial screen, especially. But then I'd say it's more your conversations with the hiring manager and your interview performance that will dictate, if you get the job or not. I got my first role with 0 years of experience. I came straight from undergrad to PhD to postdoc, and then got my first role. And they were looking for 5 to 10 years of experience, somebody in that range. I reached out and I networked with the hiring manager, sort of explained my background, explained what I did during my PhD and postdoc, and he said, yeah, you probably have some of the people skills that we would look for in those 5 to 10 years of experience, and so that wasn't that important to them. But every company is different, and I'd say you won't get through that screening process, that automated screening process, either by the outsourced or AI that's doing it. But if you have sort of a contact there, and you can sort of sell yourself to say, yeah, I don't have whatever the posting says 10 years of experience, but I have similar experience and I did similar things in my postdoc or PhD that relate, then they'll value that.
Yeah, they might not even want that. It's just like they're doing a copy paste on those job announcements. Like some of those requirements aren't even what they want.
Exactly.
Yeah. and never give a salary figure.
Yeah.
So you tell them, I want an equitable job offer. So, you know, they'll say, you know, what are your salary expectations? You say, oh, I just want an equitable offer, and they're going to insist, and you say, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to say a figure. I just
Bit
want
of
an
a game,
equitable.
yeah.
Just give me an equitable
How
offer.
do they take that kind of answer?
They don't like it, but you know that I've gotten the job and I've gotten offers that are more than I thought that I was going to get.
Yeah.
I'm Alberto Galigiana. I'm a postdoc at Molecular Biology, and I just wanted to ask, like, I'm from Europe, so I'm getting still kind of used to the work ethic in US. So my question is, how would you compare like the balance, like work and like personal life, like from the academic field to the industries? Like, how would you say, like?
So much better.
That's a good question.
So
and
much
that-
better.
that's actually
Much
something
better.
I was thinking about that I hadn't addressed.
Yeah.
Talking about work-life balance. Far better on the industry
Better.
side, and that was actually something that I had worried would be an issue. So I
Exactly.
think academics are taught that, you know, what you do is your calling, right? Like, that is something that should occupy your every waking moment of your life.
Yeah.
This is to various extents,
There's
but
no
this is kind of the
vacations.
idea behind it, right? In industry, I think there's a much more healthy attitude towards work. This is not the thing I am. This is the thing I do for a job, and I like it. I like my colleagues, and it's really interesting, but I have other things that I do with my life. Weekend time is sacrosanct. I never get like work emails over the weekend. I mean, this might be a little bit different depending on what you're doing, but overall, a much clearer delineation between work time and private time in my experience. You do have tight deadlines, but you know that for the most part, in my case, does not spill over into a lot of outside of work hours unless there's some big presentation coming up or something. I don't know what everyone else has experienced. But.
Yeah, I would say I agree with that. At least in my field, we have some, like, we're responsible for automated systems, so sometimes there are support aspects that require off-hours support, but pretty rare, and I'd say in general a better balance.
Also, I should say that the work-life balance in academia is, I should say, is not comparable to industry, as the other speakers said. In academia, one needs just work, because of being weekends, holidays, just work. But in industry, no, there is no contact in the weekends. However, I should say that if you would like to work on even weekends, that would be totally fine. But someone, you know, love to work for every day, because of being holiday, weekends, everything. If you have that kind of personality, might be academia would be a good target for you guys. If not, I should say that the industry might be your target.
Kind of surprising because PIs and stuff, when you talk to them, they're like, oh, no, if you go to industry, you're gonna be like, you know, working all the time. You're gonna be
No,
No.
no.
I heard that.
They don't have
I
experience.
heard that,
They
like,
don't
I don't
know.
No.
They
Here's
don't know
the
what
thing.
they're talking about generally because they haven't been in that environment.
Here's the thing, government grant amounts have not been increasing in years, right? You know, so 20 years ago, right, 20 years ago, you know, so just for NIH, right, your R01, you know, it's, you know, $500,000 per year?
$250 is
For
the
250
modular budget.
$250 is
Still
modular, okay.
yeah.
It's the same amount as 20 years ago, but maybe the same amount as 30 years ago. Okay, so cost of living's gone up, right? And you're competing with, it's very competitive, right? It's a very saturated field. So you're competing with all these folks, you know, and so you have to say you're going to do everything within this budget that is, you know, already it wasn't that great. And then inflation's caused it to really shrink. And so that's why that is my understanding of why in academia you're working all the time. It's because the work is not adequately compensated.
Yes.
There's not sufficient funding to cover the work time that is required to do the things you have to promise you're going to do in order to get the grant in this hyper-competitive environment. And I had a friend in my postdoc, and she was another postdoc, and she was an MD, and she was, you know, trying to meet the, you know, requirements and the obligations. She says, you know, I don't get it, you know, Melanie, these faculty, who are tenured, who are succeeding, like, how do they get to be the them? And I was like, well, that's easy. They get to be the them by exploiting the you. Right? So you get all the free labor you can. Like, if you're going to be a successful PI, you're going to be exploiting free labor from your PhDs. You're going to be exploiting free labor from postdocs. You're going to be exploiting free labor from adjuncts who think they're going to get a faculty position because they don't know how it works.
It's just the system.
Yeah. It's a pyramid scheme.
I also have this in your mind that in industry, you should provide profit to your company. In academia, your profit should be your paper.
Yeah.
But in industry, your profit should be money. Two completely different things. This shows that might be in some industries has more stress because money matters. In some others might be not. But just let you know about your focus in industry compared to academia.
I just want to add a little bit, just playing a bit of devil's advocates here, because everyone has been saying great things about an industry. I think kind of following on Amir's topic, which is like your goal is to make money for your company, and sometimes you need to meet deadlines for delivery of products or things like that. And for that, sometimes, yes, perhaps you have to work on a Saturday, and that definitely depends on the industry you're in. And for example, if we have a paper that needs to be accepted by a certain date so that can go into a particular issue, we probably, yes, have to have a few hours, or perhaps because we're a global company, we work with authors from all different regions of the world. Sometimes, yeah, I might have to stay, I'd be on a call at 9 p.m. in the evening so that I can talk to authors from different parts of the world. So that does happen, but that does not mean that the work-life balance is bad. And also, just generally speaking, I think the working culture in the U.S., because we also have many colleagues in Europe, and I think the working culture in the U.S. is much more intense compared to that in Europe, so it's just a cultural thing.
And I agree, like there's intense times.
That's what I knew, but at least, just
Yeah.
I was
I mean,
still doing academia because I just started with academia, so and even
Yeah.
comparing academia in Europe,
Oh, yeah,
where,
it's
you have
very-
like, I don't know, the whole month of August, just the university shut down.
Yes, exactly.
Like, oh, here everybody
Yeah.
works.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I totally agree with you. And, there's crunch times, and I've been actually working around the clock the past several weeks. It's been nuts, and my new, answer when people call me is 24/7 proposal shop. How can I help you? And I'm on the phone at 10 p.m. with my colleagues, and then I'm on the phone on the weekend with, the partner that wants this part, they're emailing me on the Friday and they want the proposal section by Monday at noon. And it's like, this is insane, but it does happen sometimes. But then, my boss also is telling me, okay, Melanie, you've been working 24/7. I want you to sign off at 3 p.m. today, and I insist on it. And it's a performance expectation that you're going to sign off at 3. So I've got a very good boss. But there is, like, I don't worry as much. Like, there might be times when I'm working around the clock, but when I'm done working, like, I'm not worried. Like, I don't have thoughts swirling through my head about all the things that's not done. And that was my experience in my postdoc. It's like, oh my goodness, I have, all this stuff to do. And I might sleep, but it would be fitful sleep, So, I don't have that I haven't had that since leaving academia.
I do think if you want to know about work-life balance, ask people that are actually in the jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
true.
'cause it depends
PIs,
on the
well
company.
meaning
Yeah.
as they be, don't necessarily have experience of being in those positions. So
And every company is different
that's
as well.
true.
Yeah.
Expectations are different in every
Yep.
company.
Yeah, some places are a real burnout,
Yeah.
And to be honest, when you get your first job in industry, chances are you're going to wind up in a job in kind of a toxic situation. And here's the reason: it's because the people who are hiring oftentimes are people who can't keep staff because it's toxic. So, but go ahead anyways, and then look to shift to a better spot in the same company. So if you're in a big company, if you look to shift to your first job's not going to be ideal, but that look to shift to a better spot and just know that it is better. It's just
You're not signing up for a lifetime.
Yeah,
commitment, so-
exactly. Yeah.
Great. Any other questions? Yes, please.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Oh, sorry.
So in my case, I'm also a postdoc. I was postdoc first in Brigham and Women's, and I moved here last year. And I've been here postdoc my lab moved here. We work in brain cancer, and I'm still figuring out if I really want to stay in academia or in industry. I mean, both of them look appealing to me at the same time, pros and cons. One of the main aspects that I like of academia, for instance, is that I've been a scientist with like this drive of hunger for knowledge, right? You want to keep always that challenge mentally speaking, and cognitively speaking. How, in your experience, I guess it's also context depending on what you do, but how in your experience, industry, has given you that opportunity to, in knowledge, challenge yourself and continue developing in that aspect? Do you feel your current positions allow you to continue growing in that aspect, similar to academia at some point?
Take a stab at that one since I'm in that industry. Yes and no. So I stayed in research because I was interested in continuing to do science. So I will say, like, once you have the PhD, I think whether you're going to be an academic or you're going into industry, you're moving in the direction of away from bench science and more towards like managing things and people and relationships. So that is going to be the same, like you don't see PIs at the bench, right? So there's a bit of like abstraction from that actual work, but you can, in industry, you cannot get too wedded to projects because they will be canceled on you for reasons out of your control that are made at the C-suite level, and it's just, well, this project is done, so sorry. I think you do not have the ability to go as deeply into something just for the pure love of knowledge. It's just not the way it's set up. Your goal is to, you're working for a for-profit entity, your goal is to provide something that they can sell ultimately. Now within that, like, as a research department, our goal is to say, like, find new targets, right? So there's a lot of exploratory work, but it is, I think it can feel a little superficial at times compared to like what you're doing in an academic lab where like, I'm gonna work on this pathway, any direction I wanna go, I have kind of free rein. You're still subject to getting funding for it ultimately, but this is like a well-known thing. You do have a bit more freedom in research direction in academia. Now that said, I think the gap has kind of narrowed, right? On the academic side, you're a lot more restricted with where you can get the funding for, so what type of things you can work on. And on the industry side, especially in the sort of biotech startup space, there's a lot of really innovative stuff going on where people can kind of delve more into it. So I think they've come closer together in that regard, and at the same time, on the pay and benefits side, they're diverging so much that it's leading a lot more people to look toward industry. So I would say I still get to do science, I still get to learn new stuff, new technologies, but yes, that is one thing you do have to give up, and going into it, you're gonna be a little more targeted, you're not going to be able to pursue like anything you want to just because it's cool, if that makes sense. But that has been a trade-off that I've been willing to make, and I've been kept intellectually engaged and still get to learn new stuff, so it hasn't been a deal breaker for me. But
yeah, I'd say I've actually, like, if you took a year of my postdoc and a year of my first job, I'd say I probably learned a lot more during the year of my first job. It's different things that you're learning.
Yeah, that's different.
We were building, in academia, we were building proof of concepts so we could run experiments and then publish papers. In industry, actually productionalizing something and bringing it into real everyday use was sort of a skill set that I didn't really have coming from academia. So it's something I learned, and I'd say I learned a lot about that and also the field that I was going into. So I'd say you just learn different things, but you don't necessarily have the same freedom.
You have hybrid options too. So, and that might be the best of both worlds. So, for example, at my company, IQVIA, we have a team that their job is to just do thought leadership. They're still expected that this activity is going to produce more revenue, through indirect means. But it's, they're producing papers that are original, that it's original research, it's interesting, it's topical, and it's going to make people think, wow, IQVIA is really innovative, interesting company, we want to hire them. So that's one option, industry option. And on the flip side, on the academic side, there are industry academic partnerships that you can cultivate. And I try to cultivate those partnerships because I actually like working with academics, while sitting in industry, because as you said, there's more cutting edge stuff happening. There's the methodology is further and ahead. Basically academics produce the methods and the innovations, and then industry makes profit from it. So if you're an academic, you get the glory, you get your name, out there, and if you're a PI, on top of the world, you might also, make the big bucks. But most people in academia, don't make the big bucks, So if you're in industry, you might get to work with one of the, academics who's doing that, advanced stuff, and then you figure out ways to make it profitable. So if you are in academia, and if, someone calls you from industry looking for partnership, like take the call. Like last week, I reached out to an academic whose work several of us at my company were watching that we admired. It's like, this lady, so we care about health equity. She's doing really good stuff in health equity. She's doing really good stuff in implementation science. Look at all these panels she's been on. We went to a conference, we went to her presentation. It's like, we want to work with this person. We see some contract opportunities we could go after together, and we'd make a great partnership. We'd have a good chance to win together this work and this contract and this funding. I reached out to her on LinkedIn. She was so snooty to me. She did not believe I had anything to offer her. She didn't think, I was telling her, look, I'm expecting some contract opportunities at this agency, and the one thing I don't know yet, is what exact topic it's going to be, but it's going to be in your field, and can we talk about it? And and if you have any insight on what the topic's going to be, let me know if you've had those conversations. And she said, well, it's up to the PI to propose the topic. It's like, that's not how it works in contracting. The government says what they want, and then you apply for it. And she would not believe me that there's contracts, that she thought the only funding was grants. And she could not open her mind enough to hear what I might have to say that could be super profitable for her. She thought I was asking for her for a handout. It's like, no, I'm trying to get you money, and, and then we can work together, and I also can keep my job, if I bring this contract in, So anyways, it wasn't a teachable moment, so I'm just taking this moment here, which is a teachable moment, to say, if you're in academe and industry comes knocking, take the call.
Please. First, I want to thank you all for wonderful experiences. I guess my question is, I'm a PhD student, and I think there's a very high chance I'm going to industry, but there are still many options out there, like, patent lawyer, consulting, research
nonprofits,
scientists.
yeah.
Yeah. So I'm still figuring out what I'm gonna do in the future, but I want to hear your advice on how to find the field that you want to dive into in the future.
I can start. Since you're still a PhD student, one of the best ways to do interns, using your summers, talk to your PI and get permission to do interns in different fields, and then you get a real feeling of, do I like this, or do I want to continue to pursue this? And that's also a great chance for you to build your network while you're doing interns. If that does not work, if you don't have the opportunity to do interns, I would say just reach out to as many people as you can and try to have informational interviews with them and see, just try to get to know the industry more. And then you get a feeling whether you like it or not, and then again you can apply for jobs, and you can always switch careers afterwards. You don't have to make the right choice the first time, so just be okay with that. Be okay with making mistakes.
Well said. Yeah, informational interviews are good too.
Right. I think you need to figure out what those job options actually entail, part one, and that's talking to people that do them. My wife's a lawyer, and on TV, lawyers are always in the courtroom doing exciting things, and in real life, they're writing contracts and making phone calls all day. So find out what those jobs actually are. And then I think the second thing is you need to have kind of an honest self-assessment, how much you would enjoy doing that, or where your natural interests lie, and sort of pursue that. So, and I know that part can be a little hard when you're in the academic mindset that you should be doing this, but kind of be honest with yourself. If you don't enjoy reading a whole bunch of papers, you probably don't want to go into a field working at a journal. If if you really hate patent law, then I wouldn't be a patent lawyer. And if you really hate bench work, then maybe you don't want to stick with science. I don't know. Kind of have to decide like where you think your natural talents and interests lie.
Yeah, and
that
I wonder,
can be hard.
I wonder if the Career Center offers like personality tests, like.
Yes, so you can set up.
Yeah, because that would have been really helpful for me. Like, what I didn't know when I started my postdoc is it should be obvious here today, but I'm a super extrovert. And so, a work situation in which I'm put in a room by myself, and expected to produce publications without talking to anyone, that's not going to happen. That's where my first postdoc was kind of that situation. And my second one was much better. But, now I know, like, I actually need to be, like, in a place that's pretty social to be successful. And that's something I didn't know until I tried different things.
Okay, great. So let's go ahead and we can start digging into the food, and you can mingle and ask one-on-one questions. Thank you all so much. I've really appreciated your panel.
Thank you.
So,